Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Executives, and Eccentrics, a podcast dedicated to the stories, strategies, and secrets of remarkable individuals. Join us as we engage in enlightening conversations with intriguing entrepreneurs, accomplished executives, and fascinating eccentrics, exploring their journeys, triumphs, and the unconventional wisdom that has shaped their success. In this episode, we talk with Matthew Shollar, founder and chief visionary officer of Transcend Cruises, the first cruise line built entirely for B2B group travel. We discuss why traditional cruises fail groups and how Transcend redesigns ships, schedules, and economics to fix that. Matthew explains how flexibility, sustainability, and shared experiences shape a better way to travel together.
Hello, Matthew. Tell me who you are and what you do.
I'm Matthew Shollar. I'm the founder and chief visionary officer of Transcend Cruises, which we like to bill as the world's first entirely B2B cruise line. And I guess we'll talk in the next few minutes about what that exactly means, because it's not self-evident.
No, it's not. I mean, we've talked before for a while, right? You and I chatted for like an hour and a half last time. And what I gathered from your org, or kind of this concept, is that you have built these kind of river boats, right, that are really able to be branded to the thing. That thing could be for a sports team who maybe rented the boat out for the whole, maybe the entire, everybody on the team, or Coca-Cola. You want it red with Coca-Cola, logos everywhere. Boom, you're moments away from turning the entire boat into that kind of branded experience. So can you kind of maybe drill into that a little bit, and how the hell did you get here? How did you do this?
I'll start with the second one first. So I've spent about 25 years in and around the luxury cruise space. A lot of that time, I've been doing private charters for niche groups. Started in the kosher observant market, my demographic, and then branched out into other, luxury sectors and cross-branding promotional materials. And we worked on the oceans, on the rivers. River cruising became kind of popular in the aughts and has grown a lot. Everyone's probably seen the Viking commercials on PBS. They're the big player in the market. But there are about 15 companies that sail on the rivers that have an English language product. And as I worked through these programs that we were doing, we were taking a product that was built for the retail market, a ship, and from a company that sells mostly retail programs to individual guests. We were reworking that product into something that tried to approximate something that was good for a private group experience. Sometimes it's more successful and sometimes less. Again, you have a physical venue that's shaped around a different set of clients. You have a host cruise line whose product is really built for a different audience, mostly boomer age individual guests or couples. And as you come in, whether it's a group or a private client or a corporate event, trying to kind of make that round peg, square hole dynamic work on these ships, it was a struggle, and it was a struggle for many years. I've done many charters, and I've lost a lot of opportunities with interested clients because we couldn't get a ship at the right time or for the right sailing duration, whatever it might be. So as that dynamic kind of suggested itself a number of years ago, about 5 years ago, we were sort of just pre-COVID when we started this project, I had a request from a longtime colleague, a lawyer that I work with on some real estate transactions, who called me and said, we've got a group of 50 couples. We go to a golf resort every year. Somebody saw a Viking commercial on PBS. They want to do a river cruise. Can you help us? And I said, sure, I can help you. And I couldn't help them. We couldn't get a ship at the time that they needed, for the duration that they needed, for the round of guests that made any sense to them. And that day, I called my partner. It was somebody I've known for many, many years. And I said, we need to start a new cruise line. And this cruise line has to be what we call for the B2B market. We are not in the we're not in the individual sales market at all. We don't sell to consumers. 100% of our sailings are private group departures. And our product and our business ethos and our structure is totally focused on delivering custom experiences. You mentioned branding. There are a lot of other elements of that, which we'll get into, around the group departure market. And we do that by having an entirely different business process, an entirely different focus, an entirely different cost structure, and ships that are built to serve that marketplace. And that's Transcend Cruises. That was kind of the innovation that we came up with.
Yeah, the way that you described this to me before was, if you were, let's say you were this travel agency and you had, like, we're going to do a cruise. And what we're going to do is we're going to sell that cruise. We're going to go rent some boat out. We're going to have some semblance of branding on the boat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go resell that. And it's this kind of unvirtuous cycle where those cruise people then become the actual ship that you rented out ultimately becomes their customers, right? And it's just this kind of unvirtuous cycle. And now you've created something where, you could be an operator. You could be a some type of aggregator, and then you could actually go rent your boats out, your ships out, and then it could be the complete branded experience. And now no one's fighting against each other because you're not in the consumer market. You're in the B2B market.
That's
that happened? Is that what I guess that was the I mean, it seems obvious now that you say it, but it surely wasn't obvious back then.
Well, and again, our experience was coming into this market, and half of my colleagues have been on one side of the table, which is we were chartering ships and struggling with that dynamic. And the other half were at the cruise lines. And they were the ones basically, and if sometimes fighting their own colleagues, they were a company where 95% of the business was consumer. And the business was built to serve the consumer markets. So, and you just kind of touched on a whole bunch of different points, which I think are really important. We have two types of clients. We have clients who resell the product, like maybe a tour operator or a travel agency that has the clientele they want to sell into. Maybe it's a wine tour business or a college alumni travel program, somebody else who's reselling the product, and others who sponsor it. So maybe it's a corporate outing, maybe it's a destination wedding, which is sponsored by the family, or it's someone's family anniversary or something like that. So in each of those cases, there's a set of criteria that really drive their business processes, which are not addressed by the market today. Number one, if you're reselling the product and the host cruise line that you're buying it from is also selling the same product in the marketplace, it's really tough for you to achieve the higher margin that you want because they're out there advertising discounts, advertising value add all the time, and they're in effect competing with their own clientele. If you're a sponsor of some kind, a college alumni travel program or corporate group, you come on board, but then 6 months later, that guest that was on board with you, who is not the customer of the cruise line, they're your customer, is being marketed to because they set foot on the ship. So obviously that's a conflict. So there are lots of these different sort of areas where we started seeing all kinds of opportunities to erase pain points for the clients that we serve. And in looking at the ships that we're constructing, that we're building now, we also realized that there were a lot of additional elements that went into the physical makeup of the vessels. You mentioned branding. We also have a lot of flexibility in our accommodations product and the way that the spaces work on board, because different types of groups need different elements and different setups to make it work for them. So what works for a 100-person lecturer-led college program is not the same as a 50-person wedding, and it's not the same again as a 30-person corporate board meeting. And each of them has some elements. Of course, they need food, they need sleep, they need maybe an element off ship, but there's a lot of other things that goes into making it perfected for them. And the branding is a big piece, digital branding everywhere. A lot of it is also about the number of guests on board and the level of luxury and that customization, the ability to have both group space and breakout space, which is important for most group-led, front-led programming. So this is all part of the dynamic. And as we developed, again, the combination of the business intelligence behind what we're doing, the physical offering of the hardware and the software that goes along with that, and then the structure of how we, in effect, enable our customers to go through a much simpler charter process. It doesn't take years. It doesn't take months. You don't need a team of lawyers to understand our documentation. Again, we kind of said, well, we've been on the table. What's frustrated us? What are the 8 or 9 things that was a block for us to be able to get this done? And how do we erase that? Can we? And we've been successful in doing that.
Let's talk about the foundational overlap, and that is the size of these ships, right? There, it says if anybody's seen Viking cruises, they all kind of look like the very similar type of ship. They're of exact width, exact height, and exact length, typically. That way they're able to go through the St. Lawrence, or they're able to go up the Rhine, as an example. Right. Is this kind of the industry that you've been most familiar with in that river cruising specifically? Or, and then that's how you kind of reach this logical conclusion? Or were you in other different types of travel before?
Yeah, so my prior experience was primarily ocean cruising, but river cruising became popular again, as I said, kind of in the mid 2006, 2008 timeframe. It's grown a lot in the last 10 years. again, primarily this B2C markets. We are focused entirely on Western European travel, which is really kind of the sweet spot. You can have it here in the US, you have it in some other markets, but typically that's your higher destination with a lot of beneficial ports and kind of shorter distances. It's a very bread and butter product. So again, you've seen basically all of these companies doing a version of the same thing, the same weekend to weekend, port to port, city to city, single direction. You mentioned the ships. The ships, yes, they're all identical. They have to fit under the bridges and through the lock systems on the rivers. So a ship, 135-meter ship with Viking holds 190 guests. The other operators may be on 160. So we took that same platform and said, how do we transform this into something that makes sense for groups? So we have 120 maximum passengers on our ship, so much fewer guests, a higher staff to guest ratio. And every pair of cabins we have 60 identical cabins, which nobody has. There's no such thing as like accommodations. For corporate customers, that's really important, right? So if you're doing a sales promotion and you've got all these people who won this trip, you have to put them in an identical cabin or people get really upset. And that's kind of where the foundational element of that was. Nobody's done that before. And very uniquely, every pair of cabins converts to a suite. So now you as the charter customer can say, look, what's this positioning that's best for me? Is this a super luxury all suite product with just 30 couples on board or 30 individual guests? Is this some mix of cabins and suites, which is maybe like more like a high-end travel agency where they want to have a mixture? Or is this a high density corporate program, or a college program with a speaker, and we need to kind of fill it up as much as we can with as many bodies as we can?
Sorry, okay. So what you're saying is that everything is exactly all the cabins are exactly the same, but you could make them into, you could go from 100, 120 room or whatever the room is to half that, right? Making everything a suite. So you're kind of more flexible, right. But more importantly, if it's a corporate thing, you're like, why is this cabin bigger than mine is never a thing. That's never going to come up.
Everyone is in the same accommodations, no matter which you pick, if that's important to you. And the other part that we did is we said, okay, again, most of these ships have two venues where you can have some kind of programming. There's an outside deck if it's nice weather, and then a lounge. And the lounge is set up like a living room with a bar. It's just not conducive to speaking. So we actually have a full theater on our ships. Our dining room is not segregated by booths and barriers. It's all open. So let's say the group went today to a family-owned vineyard in the Mosel Valley, and today we invite the family that owns it back on board to do a tasting dinner. One of the other nice things you mentioned before about the rivers versus the oceans is that the distances are very short. We can actually combine programming where the day activities that may have been off the ship extend into the evening, and then we can stop at a lock or a bridge and put those people in a car and send them home. So maybe we have a tasting dinner on board tonight and we kind of extend that day program. But our dining room is all open. So if somebody's up there pouring and talking about the wine or doing a corporate toast or hailing a bride and groom that are on board, they can see and interact with that content, which is not typical for these ships. So we have 5 venues where all of the guests can gather for programming. We have up to 8 additional breakout locations. We can do food in 10 locations on board. Wellness is a big piece for us. Viking doesn't even have a treadmill on the ships. It's not the demographic that they're looking for. But as you know, younger audiences it's part of their experience. They're looking for wellness all across the board. So we have about 250 square meters of wellness space on our ships. Big spa, big fitness center. It's kind of on 3 levels across the decks. Sustainability is a big piece for us. We have an entirely low emissions fleet. We've done some things to lower our what's called the draft of the ship, so we can sail even in low water conditions, which sometimes is an issue. We have lower fuel burn. So again, there's a lot of elements that go into this to making them a very high efficiency fleet, a very sustainable, wellness-oriented product, but also something that's entirely appropriate for groups. Just simply not even in hotels on shore, kind of the focus of most locations. So it's really important to us, and it's given us the ability to kind of go talk to people who never even considered this. They said, oh, that's from river cruising is for my grandparents. I mean, that's really not the product that I'm interested in. However, when you come with a group, you can do some fantastic things in very short distances, very varied, unique, non-over touristed locations, if that's what people want. You could be right up front and center, so you can walk ashore and go to a castle and have a big party, and the next day be at a museum that you sailed up to the dock and walked to. So it's really kind of a really interesting, it's a mode of transportation that is itself kind of the venue for your creativity. And we kind of love that. And we'll go back to the branding that you talked about initially. Most companies or individuals, when they do some kind of event where there's a group, they'll put up a couple of roll-up signs in the lobby or set up a folding table with a sign on it. That's not true branding. And we know this from doing these programs ourselves, that it's very frustrating to try and run programs in these venues because there's no support space for you as the client. Our client is the charterer. It's not the guest that's on board. So we actually provide a huge palette of stuff for them to brand the ship as themselves. Our brand moves into the background. We have digital screens everywhere. So you used the example before of Coca-Cola. Again, logos can be everywhere. The guests themselves can upload shots to their room door, for example, and have an Instagram gallery of their own experience. We can bring third-party branding. We work with the marketing team or the outside agencies for our clients, and they kind of, again, dress the ship, if you will, digitally. So it really becomes their venue, and and that extends to color lighting systems in the hallway, like in your car and on the deck. So it really kind of becomes this bespoke platform, if you will, to extend their brand experience to the people they have on board. And that's really a very valuable and very unheard of, if you will, experience for our clients.
So what is the current state and what is the future state, right? I believe that you're currently building some ships. I've got some in operation. Like, what's the current state and what is your 5-10 year kind of horizon?
Yeah. So we have been operating last year and this year on a chartered vessel. It's a former ship of Crystal Cruise Lines, which went bankrupt during COVID. So it's sort of the best available luxury ship that has a lower guest count, bigger galley, and some other things we need to deliver the product. Got us up and running. But our focus is on our new build ships. So we have just signed a contract we've been working for about 2.5 years on the design of our new ships. We have a really talented, very well-known, internationally known cruise design firm, cruise and yacht design firm called Tilburg Design of Sweden. So we've designed this vessel with them. We have an amazing shipyard in Holland that's built dozens of these passenger vessels. This is, again, the Nate Plus Ultra. They've never built anything like this, but they're the best in the business. So our first purpose-built ship will launch in November of next year, followed by a second ship in March of 2026. And our goal after that is to bring 2 ships a year. They're all identical. They're all interchangeable. When you charter from us, you're not chartering this vessel. You're chartering a block of time. One of the other elements that's very unique to us is that we don't actually have a sailing schedule. Most companies, when you charter from them, you are chartering you taking a retail departure they've programmed out of inventory as is. So it's 7 nights, even if you only need 4. And what we do is we say, okay, we have a 3-night minimum, but it's whatever you need. And we go where you want to go. So if you want a round trip, you want to go back to your host airport or kickoff point, we can do that. If you need 5 nights, if that's perfect, or 11, whatever that number is, it's perfect for you. If we can set it into our schedule, of course, as we grow the fleet, that becomes easier to do those more customized voyages. And we also kind of operate where the client wants to go. And very often that's not destination as much as is experience. So the other cruise lines are very used to kind of having these big city to big city kind of hit the major points for short walking tours during the day trips. Maybe our client is all bikers and they want to, get on a bike with a tour guide every day and go bike 30 miles. They're probably better off not being in the cities. They want to be in the smaller locations where they can get to some more interesting things that are closer by. Again, not over touristed. So again, it's really customized around what the clients want to do and who's on board and what their experiences that they're looking for are.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine you're going. I don't know if it's Holland, Belgium. It would probably be at the Skelde, right? And there's all kinds of cities, up between that's not Amsterdam and not Antwerp, right? That are fascinating castles. But a giant cruise wouldn't stop at that, right? And now you have the option. Now you just have to kind of pull over, or better yet, I would much rather see Dusseldorf, as a city, as an example, the Rhine, than maybe others kind of, or maybe they come these smaller spots on the side. But now you have the option. I don't know. I think you're going to crush it. It just sounds like it's now that you've got the weapon, so to speak. Now it's a matter of kind of, I guess you'll become more of a sales organization. Is what my guess is here in the next year or two as you start to ramp this up. How are you kind of addressing that portion of this puzzle?
So one of the really interesting things about being in the B2B space as opposed to the B2C space is if you think about especially big brands, right? Cruise brands, hotel brands, airlines have massive customer capture costs, right? They've got to be out there, in all the public media, on social, et cetera, it's spending a lot of money, in effect, which goes into the rates eventually, right? All finds its way into the rates of their products. We're a B2B organization. We have a very limited, even in 8 years from now, if we have 10 ships, we're going to be serving 35 to 40,000 customers a year. That's less than 2% of the number of people that Viking alone did last year, let alone the rest of our small river industry. So we're not looking for big numbers. We have a couple of hundred clients potentially. Those clients are accessed primarily through either trade shows or third-party sales. So it could be brokers, charter brokers, high-end travel agents that have groups that they build all the time. And by the way, many travel agents, retail travel agents, look and say, well, chartering makes me nervous. I don't want the responsibility. The answer is you're probably already in the charter business. You're sending 50 couples to name any big cruise line all the time. So you can turn around and basically create a totally private, exclusive departure with you running it without assuming any additional risk, which is really a nice position to be in. So there's a lot of education that we're in the process of doing now. But again, it's one-to-one, right? So we're B2B. It's a very tight organization, and we speak directly to our client base. Then they turn around and go out and sell to their own clients, and that's, we help them with that. We give them materials and the support to do that. I spent 4 hours.
Clients is a lot of clients, right? That's a ton of clients.
30,000. That's a lot of guests, but we might that 30,000 is probably generated by 150 to 200 clients. That's all. So it's actually a very tight. It's a nice business model for us, and we actually work with our clients directly because we don't compete with them. They're happy to put us on a webinar. We had a call last week with a travel agency, and they got us on the phone with a whole bunch of group operators for them. They're not worried about us taking those people away. And I did a webinar for their clients with them on the phone. So, we do that all the time. That's really kind of the education piece that we do. We do some trade shows, et cetera, but it's very direct.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm kind of doing the logistics in my head. I would much rather go sell to one person at an organization who then goes sell the entire boat than 120 individual couples, right? They're going to go into this kind of situation.
Exactly.
And now your sales and now my idea, because I mean, if you're doing 30,000 customers a year and you're charging probably $2 to $3 grand a pop, that's almost $100 million a year. That is crazy big money, right? When you kind of think, I mean, so
thanks for doing the math.
Well, it's not. Well, I mean,
yeah, no,
that's how my brain. That's how our brain works as entrepreneurs. Is that we're all adding those years together to go do the rough estimate of what the total market is, and that's a lot of money for a handful of ships.
And the truth is, if you think about it, wearing your investor hat on, because we're B2B, the margins, even we have a competitive price. The market that sets the price. But our costs are much lower, right? So our margins are much healthier, even though our cost of ships is somewhat higher because we're designing something quite unique. It's 10 or 15% higher than a regular ship, but our margins are 2.5x what anyone else is making, because again, we don't have all of these additional ancillary B2C costs. So that's a very nice position to be in.
All these little, you also don't have this whole course of middle people, right? They're kind of all the way down the line. You maybe have one sales organization that's running the entire ship out for you. And then it's a matter of how you want to dress it up, because anything's possible, right? You create whatever experience you want to create.
And we have these multiple vertical markets we sell into. So again, our team are really well recognized in those markets. We tend to hire market specialists, and also most cruise lines, this is not true only of the river business, but ocean as well, tend to operate in one market. And usually it's a language-driven market. So maybe it's English language. It's US, Canada, UK, Australia, let's say. And that's 85% of their business. Because we're B2B, we operate really internationally. We have clients coming from all over the world. We have local relationships in those markets. Again, they can accompany them. We give them space for their task force teams that are on board running the product. So let's say it's from Japan. They want to send a chef and 2 translators. We have the space for them. They're not part of the retail. We don't charge for that. In fact, we demand to some extent that they accompany their groups and run them. So we really give them the flexible tools and spaces and support they need to run the program effectively. We sell worldwide. So it's, again, a very unique kind of a market. There are untapped markets for this product in the world.
So I talk to 3 to 4 entrepreneurs per day, probably talk to 12 to 17 per week. I probably talk to 40-ish, maybe more per month-ish.
How do you stay sane?
There's a lot. Well, what I'm getting at is that
focusing on the eccentric part of your title, right? There's a lot of us who it must be attacked.
There's nothing I would rather be doing than this, to be honest with you. But
that's great.
I've heard a lot of business models, a lot of really interesting business models, but I don't think I've heard anything like this before, because it's a lot of times when you're kind of building your ship, so to speak. When I say ship, I mean your product, right?
Yeah.
It's going to X amount of burn, and then we're going to have this thing at the end of the development phase. Then we're going to see if there's a market for it. Then we're going to see if we can sell it. All those things are pretty much green for you, right? Because you already understand, right? There's not a lot of unknowns here. I mean, obviously the logistics probably will be interesting. How that software is going to actually, communicate, or how that's going to work, or, how you kind of do those sweeps for money and stuff. But those are all known and understood as well, right?
Generally speaking, I think the big challenge for us was figuring out the Tetris game of how do you not have a sailing schedule, right? The industry is built around, sailing 100% full 100% of the time, and then monetizing the onboard experience, right? So again, the ocean market, everything is about the onboard revenue. In the luxury sector, that's less impactful, but they still look to be, 97% full and sail 101% of the time. It's not the market that we're in, right? So again, we've built in some tolerances there to be less uptake. Obviously, we have more upside as well in that model. But figuring out that piece and kind of working through the teething of that. And again, how do you have a staff that's cross-trained? Because this next 5 days, you have a corporate meeting, then you have a LGBT group that's on for 8 days, then you've got a private event, somebody's anniversary for 4 days. The staff is not trained for that. There is not a homogenous thing where everybody's the same every week. So to get the right people who have the right vibe and are going to treat the customers the right way and are really looking for that challenge, right, of actually rising to that occasion and creating that guest experience on an ongoing basis. And I think that's something over the last year that we've really solved. We've truly been able to hit that out of the park. We figured out the deployment piece with one vessel. Now we can take it into a fleet and have an easier time. So yes, I mean, I would say that there were a lot of these things which in concept we thought were great. And the question in practice, how would they work? And the answer is they're working pretty damn well. So we're very happy about that.
Matthew, you've created one hell of a business model. I don't know if there's anything, I can't find an analog. I can't think of an analog. I mean, we spoke a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't come up with an analog unless you're aware of one that's kind of a similar type of model. I'm not aware of one. Are you?
Yeah, I think the process that we went through in kind of creating this was you could see this, whether it's a consumer item or a business process. Most good entrepreneurial ideas I see come from frustration, right? Everything's been done somehow, somewhere. So people who are in the market say, okay, I've seen how this works. There's an untapped market segment with these tweaks we could go after, or, the people who are running this industry are focused on this, or it's all driven by, because they're a public company, they have to have this reporting. They're frustrated about something and they go figure out a better way to do it. So we kind of coupled the better way to do it with the better product, which is, you've seen that. I don't say we're unique in the annals of capitalism, but certainly we've focused on sort of the holistic elements of our business. Again, where do people have barriers? How do we get rid of those barriers? Will they in turn buy this from us at the price that the market is set? And the answer to that is yes. And that's a business. So it really is, I don't want to say it's simple. And then the question becomes, of course, why isn't someone else doing it? And the answer is because they're doing something else and they're very successful. This would be very disruptive to them. And they're very happy to have someone else in the market who's bringing them additional customers, because we're not B2C. So if you, Scott, and your family were to come on one of our trips, you are well below the demographic that they would expect to see. Not to say that nobody ever goes with them, but that's not who they're marketing to. If you come in and you're in your 40s, and you like it, which inevitably most people do, you're going to come back again and again. You're not going to come with us because We're not in that business. You're going to go with one of our colleagues at the other lines, and we're happy to create that opportunity for them. In fact, like an airline, we could have code share agreements with other companies and kind of cross-sell their products. And we have some discussions with hotel chains, with ocean cruise lines going on as we speak about those kinds of business relationships, credit cards, et cetera. So, there's a lot of ways to take this. Again, some of them will be successful, others will be experiments, and we'll see how they work. But right now we're in that kind of acquisition mode, and it's fun for us. We're ideating. The whiteboard is our friend, and we're kind of figuring that out.
Matthew, we're going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for doing this. This was so. I mean, I've been kind of thinking about this for a couple of weeks now that we last talked, and it really is a fascinating business model.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that, and we look forward to, as we say in the business, it's time to transcend. So anybody listening, if you're interested, please be in touch with me, and we'll be happy to see if we can help you figure out an interesting way for you to serve people that you're close with in a travel mode.